What's going on, everybody? So today I want to talk about a topic that a lot of people have just kind of assumed that it would automatically come to the game, and that is Hell 6. Now, as many of you know, we're reaching the point, or at least the server has reached the point where we have passed Hell 5. So almost everyone that are regularly playing the game, have access to farm Hell 5, even if you're free to play. For those players that don't grind as regularly or are just not at 240 or are newer to the game, may not have the combat rating to access Hell 5, but will get there much faster than we have because that's how the game works. Now, with that being said, is there any real advantage to Hell 6? Is it something that people want added to the game, or will it just segregate the population once again, as every other Hell difficulty will do and has done? So this is an interesting question, and there's a few reasons why I brought this up. It's because a lot of people, I put out my video on Hell 5, and I've seen a lot of people irritated over this whole combat rating gap. And I agree, this game is a little weird in that most MMOs, most ARPGs, most RPGs, most games in general, as you increase your difficulty or as you get further into the game gets more difficult. Maybe that's because the fights become, harder. Maybe they're, more HP. Maybe they have different mechanics, or maybe you're just not as strong in comparison to them. This game, however, is a little bit different because as you go increase Hell difficulties, all the monsters stay the same. They're literally the same. Maybe their HP is a little bit higher because it scales to your damage. But relatively speaking, if you were to compare your Hell 4 stats in Hell 4 to your Hell 5 stats in Hell 5, you'll find that you basically are the exact same strength, assuming you can cap out on your combat rating. Which means that the only thing that ever matters in terms of PvE content, for the most part, if you just, kind of exclude maybe dungeons, because maybe that's when DPS matters a little bit more in terms of, builds and compositions, things like that. Just the only thing that matters is combat rating when you're talking individual strength, when you're farming. I guess you could even include dungeons in that category. If you have your same two people, compared Hell 4 to Hell 5, dungeons are exactly the same as long as you have that combat rating. Which means that there isn't really a skill, it's more of just, okay, here you go, now you have access as soon as you've played enough. And that is why I want to talk about Hell 6, because a lot of people, again, including myself, have brought up this topic and mentioned, hey, there is no real thing to grind for because there's no new difficulty. Previously, when we were accessing Hell 2, we got access to 2 additional set pieces. Hell 3, we got access to new combat rating, which ended up getting access to Hell 4, which was more set item unlocks. Hell 5, however, from Hell 4 to Hell 5 was very similar to Hell 2 to Hell 3. But in fact, there is nothing to unlock realistically. From Hell 4 to Hell 5, it's just more combat rating. And if we were to add Hell 6 without an additional, some sort of mechanic that it's locked behind, we would just be adding additional combat rating. So is this a reason, or should this be added to the game, period? Now, I'd love for you all to go ahead and jump into the comment section down below and tell me your opinion. In my opinion, it's probably not a good thing. And let me explain a couple of reasons why. If you were to add Hell 6, again, the only thing that you would be adding is a sudden jump in combat rating. Right now, as we go from Paragon 240 to 600, again, that's going to take like months and months and months of time. In fact, maybe close to a year of time to go ahead and get close to Paragon 600. That is obviously going to increase your combat rating as you go, but it's a slow progression. When you jump from difficulties in this game, you gain a massive amount of combat rating. Just comparing, for example, Hell 3 to Hell 4 items or Hell 4 to Hell 5 items. Because Hell 5 has a baseline of Paragon 240, you instantly get your baseline is one of the above average points of Hell 4. For example, if you were to unlock a Hell 4 item and get a triple stat item, you might get 130, 130, 130. And if you were to get a triple stat in Hell 5, it might be 140, 140, 140, which isn't a crazy increase, right? That's about 30 combat rating. However, those are comparing some of the top statted gears when we're talking about very close to Hell 5 and Hell 5 gear. When we compare about the average Hell 4, it is significantly lower than Hell 5. And so for the most players, you're going to instantly gain hundreds and hundreds of combat rating because your average baseline increases. Now, this is across set items and legendary items in both spheres. So that's important to know. Now, when this happens, you'll have a lot of whales, people who spend, or people who are mega grinders, and they've min-maxed their triple stat items, get access to this difficulty early, and you'll have a lot of the population run over and start farming it. Now, as we enter, and let's assume Hell 6 follows the same trend as all the Hell 5, Hell 4, and it's at combat rating about 6,000, 6.2 thousand. Let's just make it an absurd number and say, like, let's say 7,000 combat rating. Well, most players are going to take a long time to reach that mode. And then the players that are already at that point, the mega whales, are going to move on. And then as time increases, you'll have the mid spenders moving on, your low spenders that are grinders moving on, finally your free-to-play grinders, and then your free-to-play players, your casual players, which is a majority of your player base, isn't going to get access to that game mode for a long period of time. So it really heavily segregates your player base extensively. And this is something that a lot of us have experienced as well in our own clans, especially when you get close to a turn of a difficulty. I'm sure many of you out there have experienced this. When you get close to a difficulty, you're going to have, again, some of your top end players move on. And now it's harder to find a group for you, and it's a harder time to find a group for them, because, you know, they are a limited player base. Granted, they'll be the grinders. Those guys are going to be the ones that are spending money in the game, so they're more dedicated. Regardless, it's less player base to pull from. And then at the end of the day, what does it even offer? Again, as I mentioned, it offers additional combat rating. Now, one mechanic that I think could be interesting if they were to add Hell 6, which, again, I think it's very possible that they'll add a Hell 6, is to add some sort of new mechanic behind Hell 6 so it's worthwhile to acquire it. This obviously still has the same problems as I mentioned earlier, that it's going to segregate the population. However, at least it is progressing towards something. And what I mean by this is, as I mentioned, Hell 4 unlocked the rings. So now we have 6-piece set items. Hell 2 unlocked, I believe, boots and waists, or maybe it was gloves and neck pieces. I believe that was Hell 2. I'm not quite sure on that. I can't remember if it was gloves and neck pieces or boots and waist first. I think it was boots and waist first. Regardless, you unlock some new power, and set items are extremely powerful items in the game. And right now, Hell 6, if it's just like Hell 5, all it will add is additional combat rating, which in my opinion is not new content at all. There's no new progression in that at all. It's more just, hey, here's an arbitrary something for you to unlock. It doesn't really do anything, and in fact, probably harms the population more than it helps it. So that's why I want to talk about Hell 6 being added and what your all opinions are, because yeah, you could add Hell 6, and it probably isn't that difficult. But to me, it just seems very arbitrary, and there's no meaning to it. I felt the same way with Hell 5, to be honest. I've been saying this since Hell 4, and how combat rating is essentially worthless once you acquire your soft cap, and even more so at that current point in the game. We're moving to Hell 5, which, guess what, just gives you more combat rating. Now, obviously, there is some advantages to it in PvP. If you're fighting someone with comparable stats, if you're fighting a whale, it won't matter. So yes, it does have some meaning, don't get me wrong, but it really is heavily kind of looked down upon at this point, because the only thing that you're getting is additional combat rating, which again doesn't do a crazy amount. Compare that to set items, which we did get. Compare that to reforge bonuses, which we did get. You know, those things are actually significant power increases. For example, I'm getting additional 13% or 12% beneficial effect duration just because I leveled up my Paragon. That is a big deal. Getting an extra 300 combat rating for PvE literally means absolutely nothing for PvE. For PvP, it can matter in some scenarios, but for PvE, it does not. Exceptions are challenge drifts and Hellcrate bosses, but again, those just give you more combat rating, which you use in the same game modes, which doesn't help, as we've established already. So to me, it seems a little strange why they would even consider adding it. I mean, there is a reason for them. Obviously, they want to encourage people to spend. But to me, as a player base, I'm not sure that there isn't any advantage to adding Hell 6. And I've seen some people comment that they want it added, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And I've also seen some people that said they don't want Hell 6. And I imagine that the reason they don't want Hell 6 is some of the things that I mentioned in this video. So let me know what you think down below. I thought this was an interesting topic, so I wanted to mention it because I do think we're getting into that range where we're at a huge lull of the game, even with the warband content added. And at this point, your solo content comprises of doing the same thing over and over again, and honestly only playing for a few hours every day, because there is no Hell 5. There is no thing to grind for. There is no reason to get your combat rating up, to go push to the next difficulty, to get your combat rating up again. Right now, we just level up. As you level up, you're going to get higher average pieces, and therefore, you're going to increase your combat rating naturally, even if you only play a couple hours a day. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy, sub to the channel and like the video. I'm going to be reading a lot of your comments down below, so please be sure to leave them, and I will see you for the next one.